As he showed the officers in the room the secret hand gesture, General Westfield grinned. Just 12 men are aware of this signal. Every SEAL team member who has earned their trident through bloodshed. He looked around the room, dismissively, pausing for a moment on the ordinary woman in the corner, taking notes. If anybody here is aware of this, either I'm seeing an elite operative in disguise, or you're viewing confidential documents without permission. The space ceased to speak until Lieutenant Ellen Merrick stood, her hands perfectly following the precise order, adding the general had left out the last gesture. Sir, that's not the full signal. Where in the world are you from, viewing this video? Right now? Please think about subscribing for more military fiction if you liked this story. That pays. Tribute to the unsung tales of sacrifice and service. The fingers of Lieutenant Ellen Merrick moved carefully across her keyboard, arranging sensitive data as if she were an expert in therapercussions of imperfections. She had learned to be effective without being noteworthy during her 3 years. At this desk, invisible on purpose, the administrative wing of the Naval Special Warfare Command's fluorescent lights, HUMMED, dot overhead. Giving everyone the same disparaging impression, Elo liked things that way. It was simpler to fit in when everyone appeared equally exhausted and washed out. Right. Lieutenant Colonel Thaddeus walked up to her desk, his voice carrying the same sense of contempt. The inspection by General Westfield starts at 0800 tomorrow. These briefing packages must be spotless. Indeed, sir, Elo answered, her tone purposefully. Impartial, I'll be ready with everything. Wright hovered, tapping her desk with his fingertips. And Merrick, try not to be seen tomorrow, sir. Westfield dislikes interruptions, particularly from support personnel. I get it, sir. I am going to make myself scarce. And Wright left. Elo inched her eyes briefly strayed to the tiny calendar resting on her desk. The month is October. She didn't require a reminder, even if the 17th was unmarked. 3 years to the day. Her hand automatically went to the small scar that was just barely visible above her uniform at her collarbone. A sliver of remembrance flashed. Mountain rock, green night vision, and the metallic taste of blood. She disciplined as she had done innumerable times before. She pushed it away. The recollections Lee's arrived more powerful on this date, endangering the facade she had worked so hard to build. Merrick, are you all right? You appear to have seen a ghost. Calloway Lieutenant Zephyr stood over to her desk with a sincere look of worry. In contrast to the majority of career officers, Calloway had consistently one of the few who tried to find out her name. He was kind. To her, it crossed her mind. If only you knew. Just a headache, reaching for her medicine container, she answered. The medications were not for the migraines she had on file, but for treating persistent pain from injuries that were not formally reported. Injuries that were incurred at a height of she shouldn't have been in a mountain range at 9,300 feet. Those must be some really bad migraines. You take those, Elo faked a tiny smile. Chronic illness? Almost every day. Nothing Westfield's inspections are legendary, so make sure to look after yourself. Tomorrow is going to be a really demanding day. Having once had a lieutenant at Coronado reassigned to Arctic duty for non-regulation. Calloway lowered his voice. Pen, Elowen said. Thanks for the warning, in a tone that was just the right amount. Worry among administrative professionals is not overly worried or self-assured. A forgettable answer from a forgettable individual. Later in the afternoon, she heard 2 junior cops close to the water cooler. Their voices barely audible enough for her to overhear brief exchanges. Wright would have a heart attack if he were worried about tomorrow's inspection. As he always does, if he truly needed to witness warfare. Did you witness the new tactical evaluations in the Novsok briefing? At last, something helpful from the upper desk jockeys, most likely the product of a contractor. If tactical reality bit exalted secretaries, they wouldn't know it. Elo continued typing, her face unchanging, even as her jaw tensed a little. She had meticulously included the tactical assessments they were lauding in her work in her 6-month assessments. She made a few minor observations and recommendations that only someone with real field experience that would be valued. At 1,800 hours, the majority of staff members had left for the day. leaving Elo behind to complete the briefing packs for when she was completed. She purposefully veered off course in the direction of the exit, passing tomorrow's inspection. The names of soldiers who had lost their lives in duty were inscribed on the large black granite surface of the command's memorial wall to Naval Special Warfare. A part labeled simply classified was located close to the bottom right corner. Operations, where those died to missions that were officially never carried out, were honored with stars rather than names in the gloomy twilight light. Elo stood by herself in front of it, tracing 6 brothers and sisters in arms whose sacrifice lingered over a blank place where 6 stars should have been. She said, 3 years, almost done. Her flawless military demeanor was captured by a security camera. In the corner, as she stood at attention before the memorial in a position that was very different from her typical administrative style. For a short while, Lieutenant Antolin Merrick vanished and was replaced by another, a person hardened by treachery and forged in battle. Then, as fast, she lowered her shoulders a little, adjusted her glasses, and disappeared once more. She went past Commander Isolde Blackwood on her way out, the intelligence officer whose meticulousness was known for renowned. Eloin's eyes met briefly, then cautiously became blank. She said, narrowing a little in that analytical manner that had landed her a career. Blackwood inquired. Her just final preparations for tomorrow's inspection, ma'am. Westfield's a hard worker, she said in a casual tone, but her eyes were alert. Instance. Likes to surprise people, Blackwood remarked. I'll keep that in mind. Blackwood nodded, but her eyes lingered for too long before she moved on down the corridor. Mind, Commander. Concern fluttered over Elo's mind. Blackwood was the most desirous to her purpose, the one individual whose critical thinking could reconcile contradictions that others would have overlooked. Returning to her small flat, Eloin locked the door and carefully looked around for any indications of a disruption. After discovering none, she unlocked a secret panel in her closet that had a fading patch on a worn tactical vest. Ghost Team, the same one that General Westfield wore in his dress outfit. She rubbed her fingers over the obsidian dagger, recalling its weight in the arid mountain air and the sound of gunshots, and the radio quiet that ensued after her team's last request to be extracted from a hidden compartment. She took out a safe tablet from under her bed and went over her gathered evidence one last time. 3 years off patient labor, progressively elate, retrieving files that shouldn't have been accessible, recording talks that accused Westfield of leaving her squad behind. Tomorrow, she muttered to the empty room, as usual on the anniversary. She fell asleep in fits and starts, and in her dreams, she's back in the mountains. She heard Captain Frost's voice as they carried Staff Sergeant Adler through deep snow, his blood trailing after them. As the weather worsened, she heard a voice on the radio pleading for rescue. She felt the pain if she woke up at 0500, soaked in betrayal when the response eventually arrived. Extract not authorized. Maintain posture, sweaty but clear-eyed. 3 years of intense concealment and invisibility would come to an end today. She, meticulously dressed in her uniform, making sure every aspect was regulation perfect. In anticipation of Westfield's inspection, the knee wasn't lost on her. She had to pay close attention to details in order to look absolutely inconspicuous at her restroom. Lieutenant Elin Merrick, an administrative specialist, gazed back at her with hair as she examined her appearance in the mirror. Standard issue. Glasses pulled into a standardized bun, forgettable and expressionless, and no one observing her would-see ghost team leader, Lieutenant Commander Merrick. The lady who had transported 2 injured teammates across 20 meters off hilly region who had made it to an extraction point after 14 months in enemy territory. Only Toothed Naval Special Warfare Command would not yet see that woman after learning that she had been pronounced killed in battle. When she arrived, the center was buzzing with anxious energy, and junior officers were anxious about making last-minute checks. Colonel Wright prowled the hallways, yelling commands and rearranging details prior to General Westfield's arrival that didn't need to be adjusted. When he saw her, Merrick called, "Are those briefing packets ready?" "Yes, sir." Placed. In the conference room as asked, "All right, do you recall what I said? Don't be seen today?" "Of course, sir." Ella positioned herself at her desk, planning the daily administrative duties. Her peripheral in his computer screen's reflection. Lieutenant Calloway was seen tensely straightening his outfit. She said, "Calm down, Calloway. You'll be all right." He gave her a thankful grin. "It's easy for you to claim. It's unlike operations. Administrative personnel are not grilled officers. If you only knew," she repeated in her mind. The main doors opened at exactly 8 a.m. The crowd jolted to attention when General Malcolm Westfield, a tall guy with 2 assistants on either side of him, approached.
His iron gray hair and the self-assured demeanor of someone used to total power. His campaign ribbons and ornaments, such as the unique patch that matched the one on his chest, made an amazing display. Concealed ins. He barked as you were, his keen eyes were looking about the room seeking flaws. Colonel Wright took the stage. "General, welcome to Naval Special Warfare Command. We are honored by your inspection. Let's see if your command is as clear-cut as possible. Let's avoid the small talk. According to your report, Eloyne observed Westfield's systematic progress across the administrative wing for the next hour. His methodical efficiency in interrogating staff and scrutinizing processes was evidently intended to intimidate. Regardless of the quality of the queries, they are followed by sharp, brief inquiries and angry grunts. Responses. Eloyne kept her head down and concentrated on her until he came to her part. Employment. Just another unseen administrative specialist. What's this? Westfield inquired, selecting. Updates to the NAVSOC tactical protocols, sir, she said without raising her gaze, picking up a folder from her desk. Filed. And dispersed in accordance with the rules. He quickly skimmed over it before placing it back on her desk. Cry on. Yellow exhaled deeply as he proceeded. The initial obstacle was overcome, and by mid-morning, the examination had relocated to the briefing room at the command center, where senior officials convened to conduct Westfield's evaluation. Eloyne, an administrative specialist tasked with recording the discussion, sat quietly in a corner with his notepad open, the ideal. Westfield strode between the rows of people in the command center, which pulsed with tension. Officers, with his group following. Colonel Wright stood erect at the front, perspiration dripping from his brow. Even though the room was cold. "Your security procedures are out of date," Westfield said, looking at a binder. "Colonel, who approved these procedures?" "According to Wright, that would be Lieutenant Calloway's department, sir." Yellow saw Calloway stiffen as he reacted swiftly, hurling the junior officer beneath the bus without hesitation. Westfield looked at him. "Lieutenant, tell me why your security procedures don't align with NAVSOC's. Section 5.3 of Standard Procedure." Calloway paused, obviously caught off guard. Guard. In fact, Eloyne heard herself utter, "Sir." Before she could stop. Last month, that part was updated, and Lieutenant Calloway's procedures now reflect the latest norms. The room became quiet. Everyone's gaze was fixed on her. The Westfield's eyes furrowed. Administrative specialist who seldom spoke in meetings. "And you are?" "Lieutenant Elian. Administrative support, Merrick, sir." His eyes lingered on her for a second, then he brushed it off. Eloyne looked at her and went on with his examination, but as he turned away, he saw Commander Blackwood examining her. Westfield spent the rest of the morning questioning operations personnel with fresh interest from the other side of the room, regarding their preparedness and familiarity with procedures. His examination was obviously intended to establish control rather than honestly evaluate abilities. Every question appeared to be designed to make the respondent appear stupid, and every response satisfied. With hardly disguised contempt, Colonel Wright declared they would meet again at 1,300 hours 4. Yellow took the chance to go over her preparations one last time before the second part of the inspection. The topic of the afternoon session would be Westfield's area of expertise, classified operations, and the time she had been waited for. After 3 years of perseverance, the Ghost Squad would finally receive justice. The command. During the lunch break, the center briefing room was changed, and the typical conference table was now organized, a formal presentation at which General Westfield's role was explicit. Officers filed. In silence, the atmosphere created by the interrogations in the morning being muted. Yellow, the epitome of administrative efficiency, took her place in the back corner with her notes ready. As she organized her supplies, she sensed Commander Blackwood watching her from the other side of the room. Since their conversation in the morning, the officer had been observing her with growing curiosity. Yellow maintained her look neutral, but her heart raced. It was perilous to be seen, particularly by someone as shrewd as Blackwood. General Westfield entered the room after Colonel Wright called everyone to attention, and his assistants brought more secret files. As you were, Westfield replied, his tone possessing a man's nonchalant authority. Used to instant compliance. We'll be going over confidential operational procedures this afternoon, specifically concentrating on integrating intelligence resources with special operations. He nodded to one of his assistants who gave the senior officers in attendance sealed folders containing case studies of both successful and unsuccessful operations over the previous 5 years. Knowing why some were successful and others weren't is crucial to your command functions. Yellow kept up the appearance of a detached professional, yet she waited for this moment, and if Westfield was going to make a reference to Obsidian Dagger, it would be right now. Colonel Wright Westfield went on, the performance indicators for special operations within your command have been not great, but adequate. I want to talk about a few particular procedures that have worked well in other places. Westfield guided the senior officers through a number of operation scenarios over the course of the following hour, asking their tactical evaluations and decision-making procedures. His purposefully frightening demeanor was intended to demonstrate his better expertise and experience. The majority of officers agreed with him, not wanting to question his claims. The tension in the room increased as the briefing went on, and even senior officers with decades of service was reluctant to talk. Westfield had established the ideal environment, where there was unquestionable and absolute authority. Let's talk about operational security. Westfield changed tactics and stated, failures. Lieutenant Calloway, because you're in charge of security protocols, what do you think is the most frequent area where secret operations are compromised? After the exchange of the morning, Calloway straightened in his chair, obviously ready to make amends. The majority of compromises happen when operators stray from established communication protocols, sir. Procedures. Westfield's face stayed impartial. A suitable textbook. He turned to face the larger chamber and said, an answer, Lieutenant, but incomplete. The most severe security breach occurs when operators put people before mission goals. Elo's pen paused on her notebook. She felt a familiar heat rising in her chest, but her breathing remained measured. Westfield went on, sentiment has no place in special operations. Several operations jeopardized as a result of squad leaders' refusal to desert injured members when it became tactically necessary. Demanded it. Colonel Wright agreed, nodding. A challenging but essential truth of command, sir. Yes, Westfield said, apparently happy with Wright's assistance. This leads me to an example of operational excellence. 3 years ago, Operation Obsidian Dagger was the epitome of flawlessly carrying out secret procedures in challenging circumstances. The only visible indication of the anger that was growing inside Yellow was the whitened knuckles surrounding her pen. She used the 4 counts in, hold for 7, 8 counts out were breathing methods she had learnt during her special operations training. Commander Blackwood observed her suspiciously from the other side of the room. Obsidian Dagger was a deep. According to Westfield, a 6-person ghost squad was sent on an intelligence-gathering mission in the Hindu Kush. Gather information on new terrorist networks that are active in the area. He hesitated, his face changing to one. Unfortunately, the squad was lost as a result of severe weather and enemy contact, but the intelligence. They were crucial to subsequent national security efforts, since they were able to transmit before they were lost. As though they had been lost instead of left behind. Yellow sensed her meticulously crafted persona was starting to fall apart. After the evacuation was rejected, she had been in enemy territory for 14 months, moving only. She had buried 4 of her friends in tiny mountain graves and was living on nothing at night as her wounds festered. Westfield phoned before she could evacuate the last survivor, who passed away 3 days later in spite of her best attempts. Weather-related setback. Sir, a subordinate intelligence officer said. Up. Operation Obsidian Dagger isn't in our regular briefing documents, and I'm not familiar with it. It wouldn't be, Lieutenant, Westfield said. Obsidian Dagger is still very secret. The majority of its procedures are. He grinned thinly and said, in fact, some operational elements are only known to those with specific clearance levels. The general self-satisfaction was only known to those directly involved in its preparation and implementation. It was clear that he was exploiting the covert operation to emphasize his personal significance and remind everyone there that he had information that they didn't, information that made him superior to them. In fact, Westfield went on, obviously. Obsidian Dagger, relishing the limelight, established procedures so safe that certain components are recognized. He walked to the middle of the room, grinning smugly, only to those with the highest clearance. This extraction signal sequence, for instance, was created especially for that procedure. He showed a. Eloyne recognized the intricate sequence of hand gestures immediately, and her own hand's muscle memory twitched in answer, desiring to finish the procedure correctly. Westfield's signal was insufficient, lacking the. Only 12 men remain who are aware of the vital altitude indicator that would have indicated their extraction spot at more than 9,000 feet. There was silence in the room as Westfield said this to all the SEAL team operators who had earned their trident in blood. Appeared uneasy about the theatrical performance, but was hesitant to speak. If anyone here is aware of this. Westfield laughed. Either you've been accessing confidential documents without permission, or I'm examining an elite operator in disguise. In the anxious environment, the joke was a complete failure. However, Westfield was not seeking an answer. He was showcasing his superiority and unique expertise when Eloyne stood. Her hands automatically followed the precise pattern, adding the last motion that Westfield had left out. Everyone in the room looked at her, with reactions ranging from bewilderment to startle. She stated, "That's not the complete signal, sir," in a clear and steady voice. The altitude indicator and standard procedure for mountainous extraction points above are included in the terminal movement. 900 feet. The room went cold. Westfield's expression became lifeless as he gazed at the administrative expert who had just proven to be an expert in a confidential signal that only elite operators would be aware. His calm crumbling, he screamed, "Who the hell are you?" Yellow took off her glasses, positioned herself in the ideal military stance. The administrative expert disappeared, to be replaced by something quite different. A ghost, a weapon, a soldier. Operation Obsidian Dagger's ghost team leader, Lieutenant Commander Eloyne Merrick, sir, reported Kia 3 years ago together with my whole team. She took a soiled, blood-stained patch out of her pocket and laid it on the table exactly like the uniform one of Westfield. She went on, "We weren't lost, sir," her coldly exact voice. There was silence during the briefing. "We were abandoned, and I'm the only one who made it back." There was no room. Colonel Wright's mouth moved silently back and forth. Younger officers gaped in shock. Commander Blackwood, with a faint smirk on the corner of her mouth, was the only one who didn't appear astonished. "This is ridiculous." At last, General Westfield sputtered. "In the Hindu Kush, Merrick lost his life. She is not who she seems." "Respectfully, sir," Blackwood moved to the front. "For some reason, I thought the lieutenant was strange. Time. For an administrative specialist, her tactical assessments were far too sophisticated." "You were aware?" Wright looked over at Blackwood, reening his face. "I thought so," Blackwood clarified. "I have also been observing. Lieutenant Merrick's field experience is the only source of insights found in administrative job. Among her security measures are backup plans that fix problems that most analysts would never think about." Elo's gaze remained fixed. Westfield's. "After finishing 3 years ago, my team asked for an emergency evacuation. Our mission goals. The weather was becoming worse. We had caused injuries. Westfield started by demanding operational security. Eloyne, you got our request." Stopped and took a document out of her folder. "After admitting it, you purposefully refused to allow extraction to keep your deniability credible." She put the printout of a confidential correspondence on the table. Log displaying the denied extraction request. How was the file accessed? Westfield insisted. That content is extremely classified. I've been reintegrating into this for the past 3 years. Order, sir. For 3 years, they systematically collected evidence while remaining undetected. Westfield's expression grew stern. Whatever personal grudge you may have, Lieutenant, you have now broken several security procedures. Due to security infractions, I'm ordering your detention. I beg your forgiveness, sir, said Commander Blackwood. However, if we betrayed her, not the other way around, she is who she claims to be. Lieutenant Calloway straightened abruptly. I now recognize her, sir. A slimmer face and different hair, but that's Commander Merrick, of course. I once witnessed her briefing prior to Obsidian Dagger. Even back then, she was a legend. The space changed. Eloyne was now treated with fresh respect by junior officers who had previously disregarded her, realizing what she was. Not merely an operator, but a person who had fought her way back to life in order to pursue justice. Colonel. Seeing the tide was turning, Wright moved away from Westfield. I was unaware of any extractions that had been abandoned. Request, General. Ellen calmly replied, Of course you didn't. Because the operation was divided into different areas. Those who were actively involved in the planning process would have been aware of it. She looked back at Westfield. Only individuals who created the choice to desert us. Westfield's mouth tightened. You're unaware of the bigger strategic factors in play. National security interests are opposed by one team. It's an easy computation. Is that you, sir? Eloyne opened her folder once more and pulled out a new paper. Because this after-action report claims, which you directly signed, the weather, not strategic necessity, was the reason the extraction was refused. She looked around the room. 6 operators were dropped by General Westfield, not for strategic reasons, but as admitting our position would have exposed illegal activities in a politically delicate area. We were refused extraction not to safeguard national security, but to hide a political blunder. Anger made Westfield's cheeks flush. Confidentiality agreements were signed by you. Treason is what this is. No, sir, Eloyne said, calmly. Leaving your operators in a difficult environment. The treachery was that. On the table beside the patch, she set a tiny tactical camera memory card. 6 operators lost their lives while awaiting assistance that never materialized. Lieutenant Soren Wade, Staff Sergeant Talia Adler, Captain Arlen Frost, Sergeant. Specialist Briar Thorne, Corporal Zion Wright, and First Class Kestrel Hammond. As she listed her slain teammates, emotion broke through her poise for the first time. When I could, I took their bodies to safety. When I couldn't, I buried them. 14 months in enemy territory, using intelligence that was allegedly so vital that I made my way to an extraction location. Defended their sacrifice. Every officer was enthralled by her remarks, and the room was still. Even Westfield appeared to be momentarily quieted by the unvarnished reality of her situation. Eloyne responded, Commander Blackwood, her voice steadying once again. I think tomorrow marks the reopening of the Operation Obsidian Dagger Congressional hearing. Blackwood gave a nod. Yes, it does. Additionally, I believe they would be eager to speak with someone who was previously listed as Kia. Westfield argued that this was still classified material, but his voice had lost its power. National security would suffer from disclosure. Sir, what undermines national security? I'm leaving our operators and hiding it, Blackwood retorted. It erodes confidence in authority. It undercuts the basis of special operations itself. Yellow glanced to the officers in the room, who were now observing her with a blend of reverence and amazement. When I buried my crew 3 years ago, I promised them that I would make it. Return, that I would ensure their memory would endure, and that their sacrifice would not be concealed by classification. To keep someone's career safe. She stood up straight and tall. She really was a lieutenant commander. Ultimately made public. That's what I've done. Colonel Wright got his uncomfortably in the throat. Maybe we should carry on this conversation in private, General. I think that would be prudent. Blackwood concurred. And I'll have to get in touch with Jag right away. A suspected Kia. It is necessary to follow the correct protocol when an operator returns alive with proof of command misconduct. As his support dwindled quickly, Westfield's gaze swept around the audience. Merrick, this isn't over. No. Yes, sir, she said. It's only the beginning. The next 24 hours flew by. Security procedures, medical exams, and debriefings. Elian discovered herself at Naval Special Warfare Command, in a secure meeting room with JAG officers, intelligence officials, and senior Navy officers who had arrived overnight after hearing that a suspected Kia operator had returned, including accusations directed at a general commander. Commander Blackwood had been by her side almost all the time, handling the procedure with effective accuracy while making sure Yellow received the deference that her position and background required. In general, Westfield's security clearances had been briefly suspended while he was detained elsewhere in the institution. Research. Admiral Helena Vantage formally addressed Commander Merrick, utilizing the title that, within hours of her disclosure, had been returned to her. I would like to personally convey how remarkable your return and survival are. The Navy, like your team, was saddened by your loss. Eloyne's voice was calm despite her fatigue as she answered, "Thank you, ma'am." Lieutenant Merrick's administrative specialist persona had completely disappeared, and her actual acting in the capacity of a special operations officer. According to your debriefing, you escaped arrest in difficult environments for 14 months. Terrain prior to arriving to a Pakistani Allied extraction site. After that, you spent almost 2 years developing anew, establishing your identity and re-entering Naval Special Warfare Command. Everyone will be held accountable for Operation Dagger of Obsidian. Indeed, ma'am. Admiral Vantage looked at her for a while. Commander, that level of commitment is both admirable and worrisome. The majority would have just revealed getting to safety. With all due respect, Admiral, Eloyne said, I tried that first. I went straight to military intelligence when I arrived at the embassy in Islamabad. I was told that I should have reported Operation Obsidian Dagger through the appropriate channels because it was classified beyond their clearance. She slid send a file with her first contact report. When I demanded to speak authoritatively regarding the abandoned extraction, I was informed that if I pursued the issue, I might be charged with breaking security of operations. General Westfield's office called the intelligence officer I spoke with directly. An hour after I got there, Admiral Vantage studied the document, her face growing serious. Thus you decided that your only choice was to work from within? Ma'am, I pledged to my group that classification would not be used to bury their sacrifice. Slowly, the Admiral nodded. This afternoon marks the reconvening of the Congressional hearing on Special Operations Oversight. In particular, they've asked you to testify, Commander. Yellow experienced a wave of validation and fear. She had spent 3 years working for this, but the truth of disclosing classified. There were risks associated with operations. Admiral Vantage went on, if you have reservations, I understand. Giving a statement implies increased public exposure, which makes your alternatives for special operations more difficult in the future. Respectfully, ma'am, the moment I laid Captain Frost to rest on that mountainside, I stopped thinking about my future in special operations. This isn't regarding my work. It has to do with responsibility. The Admiral's face grew a little softer. Excellent. Commander, Blackwood will go to the hearing with you. Your testimony will not be directed or obstructed by the Navy. The reality merits being heard. Blackwood came with a suitcase of clothes as the Admiral left. I decided to take the time to putting together your commander, formal outfit, appropriate ranking, and real decorations. Yellow took the bag with a gesture of gratitude. I appreciate your help, Commander. Others wouldn't have been as eager to trust my narrative. Merrick, I have 20 years of experience analyzing intelligence reports. I can tell the difference when I view it. Blackwood grinned a little. Additionally, your administrative duties were too good. Unless they have a secret agenda, no one with your tactical vision spends their career filing reports. Motivation. Eloyne appeared before the Congressional Special Operations Committee 4 hours later. Committee for Oversight. Her dress outfit with its rows of combat lights illuminated by the chamber's bright lights. Ornaments. The press, parliamentarians, and military officials were crammed into the room. Representatives. At a different table, General Westfield sat with his attorney, his face a mask of restrained impartiality. The meeting was called to order by committee chairwoman Representative Josephine Harding. This unique panel discusses fresh information about Operation Obsidian Dagger, a covert mission that claimed 3 years ago, a 6-person special operations squad was formed. Today, we are witnessing something never seen before. She walked over to Eloyne. Please provide your name and rank for the record. Ma'am, Lieutenant Commander Eloyne Merrick of the U.S. Navy, formerly Operation Obsidian Dagger's Ghost Team Leader. A whisper swept through the room. It was assumed that Commander Merrick. Representative Harding told the committee that she and her entire squad were killed in combat. Her prior appearance. Us now is remarkable in and of itself. Commander, kindly let the committee know how you got here when you are listed as deceased in official documents. For the following half hour, Eloyne offered a succinct yet thorough explanation of Operation Obsidian Dagger, including the mission goals, the extraction denial, and her eventual return and survival. She presented the facts in an emotionless manner, with an operations report's accuracy. Once we've accomplished our main goal of acquiring intelligence, the weather quickly deteriorated. An enemy encounter had resulted in the injuries of 2 squad members. Captain. From our preset coordinates, Frost requested an emergency extraction. She showed off her communication log, collected when she was working undercover. The extraction request was received and acknowledged, according to this log. The official reason for the refusal of extraction, as stated in the succeeding entry, is weather. A representative. Harding looked over the papers. And you think this explanation was made up? Indeed, ma'am. Although the weather was undoubtedly a contributing element, it wasn't prohibitive. More significantly, General Westfield signed this document following the operation. Reveals the real cause of the denial. She held up another file. Taken out. Intelligence indicated that foreign assets were operating in the area without authorization. Recognizing our existence would have caused issues diplomatically with alleged allies. The lawyer for General Westfield right away protested. These records are still classified, Madam Chairwoman. In this context, their revelation is in violation of several security measures. I will remind the Council that the highest security clearance is held by this committee for the sake of monitoring, Harding forcefully replied. Go on, Commander. The reason the extraction was rejected wasn't. It was politically inconvenient, but not possible, Yellow said. To upkeep, 6 operators were left behind. Believable denial of our existence in the area. Then General Westfield stood up. This description is a severe misrepresentation of practical realities. It was impossible to extract without jeopardizing other assets and employees. Although challenging, the choice was wise from a tactical standpoint. Yellow turned to look him in the eye. When you wanted all of our emergency beacon signals records, was it tactically necessary? Removed, sir, from monitoring stations? Did you make the right decision by refusing to send search and rescue when 3 days later, the weather cleared? She presented the committee with another document. This directive, issued in accordance with with Westfield's approval, monitoring stations were expressly told to ignore any emergency signals from our operating region as likely attempts at hostile deception. This was released when 4 of my team colleagues were still living. As the committee members went over the document, the room went quiet. Eloyne went on, her voice now displaying emotion. I used my bare hands to bury 4 of my teammates. Captain Frost. When our medical supplies ran out, he died from exposure. After 8 days of surviving her injuries, Staff Sergeant Adler. She contracted an infection. Within the first month, the remaining team members passed away. For the next year, I avoided being caught, gathering information and traveling to a location for extraction. Republic. Harding took off her spectacles. Your survival, Commander Merrick. It is quite wonderful in these circumstances, but I must ask, Why not come forward right away upon getting to safety? Why use a fictitious persona to infiltrate Naval Special Warfare Command? I tried to report. Via the appropriate channels, ma'am. When I arrived at the embassy in Islamabad, officials ordered me to remain silent. General Westfield was contacted. It became evident that my team's only chance to secure justice was to come together. Proof from the system itself that had failed us. The lawyer for General Westfield leaned forward. Madam. Regardless of her motivations, Chairwoman, Commander Merrick's tactics constituted grave security breaches. Establishing a. It is a federal offense to use a false identity to gain access to classified systems. It is. Commander Blackwood interrupted from her seat to say that operators should be killed in order to hide political blunders. Behind Eloin. Order was given by Representative Harding. This committee understands the complexity of the law. Engaged. The ethical transgressions that might have resulted in needless deaths worry us just as much. The hearing went on for a few more hours, with intelligence personnel and technical specialists giving background information on the operation and what follows. Eloin maintained her composure the entire time, responding to inquiries with the. She used to be an outstanding team leader because of her clarity and accuracy. As the meeting came to an end, again, Representative Harding spoke directly to her. Commander Merrick, not being held responsible for previous acts. What do you hope these proceedings will accomplish? Yellow sat up straight in her seat. I want my team to be appropriately acknowledged, ma'am. Their families provided the truth about how they passed away, and their names were added to the memorial wall. Additionally, I wish to modify operational procedures such that no commander can leave personnel in the field to defend political factors as opposed to justifiable tactical requirements. The chairwoman gave a serious nod. Many thanks. Commander, thank you for your testimony. Your evidence will be used by this committee to continue its investigation. Westfield, General, will stay on administrative leave while we investigate. Eloin experienced an odd feeling of both as the hearing came to an end. Emptiness and completion. She had been focused solely on this moment and the revelation of the truth for 3 years. Now that the future beyond it seems unknown, but it had arrived. They left the room, Commander Blackwood following her. You performed admirably there. It's unbelievable that you were acting like a forgettable administrative assistant only yesterday. Expert. There was never such a person. Eloin answered. No. Blackwood concurred. However, the commander who just provided testimony is the actual something. Merrick, the Navy needs honest officers like you. After a month. Before the wall commemorating Naval Special Warfare, Eloin stood in her dress uniform. The families of the dead Ghost crew gathered around her, witnessing her firsthand after learning of their. As they had been assured, loved ones had not perished in a routine training mishap. The elderly mother of Captain Frost gripped the hand of Eloin. He spoke of you in his letters, said you were the finest officer he'd ever served with. Of all of us, Eloin said quietly. They all were. Blackwood, Commander. Admiral Vantage was standing close by as the ceremony started. On the memorial wall, 6 additional names were seen, no longer redacted, no longer concealed by the stars that stand for classified activities. Lieutenant Soren Wade, Staff Sergeant Talia Adler, Captain Arlon Frost. Admiral Vantage, Hammond Corporal Zion Wright, Specialist Briar Thorne, and Sergeant First Class Kestrel Advanced. Bringing along a tiny case. The Navy Secretary personally apologizes for the command lapses that resulted in this tragedy, she remarked, revealing the Navy Cross inside the box. This ought to have was granted 3 years prior. Your efforts displayed great bravery in saving vital intelligence. Trying to save your teammates. Yellow nodded solemnly as she accepted the medal, not wanting to be recognized for herself, but the recognition signified something more significant, the revelation of the truth. As the ceremony. After finishing, she positioned 6 trident pins on the wall beneath the new names. In the background, monitors softly broadcast reports detailing General Westfield's retirement and the current. Congress is looking at operational accountability. A young lieutenant reluctantly came forward. If it's okay with you, Commander Merrick, May I inquire how you managed to survive 3 years by yourself in enemy territory? After 3 years, Elo's anger eventually subsided as she glanced at the memorial and then back at the officer. Something else. I wasn't struggling for survival, but rather for purpose, not peace. Some missions don't end until everyone arrives, Lieutenant. I was struggling to remember. She turned to the wall of names. Home in one form or another. Eloin gave a sunset over the memorial. Behind her, each officer in attendance, including Commander Blackwood and others, gave a perfect salute to her fallen teammates. In the weeks that followed, Admiral Vantage stood at attention and saluted her instead of the wall. Despite the trauma she had experienced, Eloin received offers for a number of places within Naval Special Warfare Command. She was crucial for training future operators because of her unique experience and demonstrated resilience, but more significantly, her tale had prompted a thorough examination of command accountability and extraction procedures across all special. One afternoon, Commander Blackwood discovered her in the office that had served as her cover but was now formally belonged to her. Commander Merrick, Responsibility, and Special Operations Training. Blackwood inquired, "How does it feel to use your real name again?" Eloin, "That's odd." Acknowledged. "I fantasized of taking back my identity for 3 years, and now I occasionally. Old traditions cause me to respond to Lieutenant Merrick rather than the commander." Blackwood nodded. "In relation to that, your new extraction protocol's first cohort of applicants will come the following week. Training." Yellow examined the pictures on her desk. "Do you feel prepared?" The only ones of the entire Ghost Squad captured in the final days of Operation Obsidian Dagger, with 6 joyful faces in return. She said, "They'll be ready when I'm done with them." "No operator," she said, not knowing what was waiting for them in the Highlands, "gets abandoned once more. Not under my supervision." Eloin opened her desk as Blackwood departed. She opened a drawer and took out the bloody worn Ghost Team patch she had been carrying for 3 years, then traced it. Before putting it in a frame with her Navy Cross, outline it one final time, not as a reminder of treachery, but as a emblem of a commitment fulfilled. The system had let her team down once, and she was now in a position to make sure it didn't happen again. Once more. Some missions went on long after the operation was declared to be finished. Hers had changed from pursuing justice to protecting those who would come after her. She had been the only member of Ghost Team to return home. She would be the reason they all did, operators.